kingdom and community. And today we're going to talk about the infamous When They See Us, now showing on Netflix. So there have been a lot of conversations about this movie series anyway. However, when I was comparing my notes to the videos that I've been seeing, they haven't been talking about the things I'm going to talk about. So I suggest you watch this whole video from start to finish and tell me what you think in the comments below. But wait, before we go any further, like, subscribe, and share this video to see more of this content coming soon. So let's get right into it. First, I would like to say, even if you have not seen the series, this video may still be beneficial to you because this series is based on real life events. Therefore, the things that happened in this series are still very pertinent and relevant to today's times, and especially when talking about the justice system. I learned things, I learned perspectives that I didn't know. And also, there are a lot of people who say things like they're tired of seeing movies and things like this because they're sad, which is very true. This movie is extremely hard to watch. However, I had never even heard about this case until I heard about the movie coming out, and I didn't research about the case. I just watched the movie for the first time, and that was when I learned about this case. Therefore, even though things like this are uncomfortable, they still are very beneficial to the future generations that are coming up who are like me some days and aren't going to read about them, who will prefer to see them on TV. So just give this video a try and let me know what you think. The Central Park Five, now known as the Exonerated Five, are a group of a group of young boys who were aged 14 through 16 at the time of this trial, at the time of this scandal, let's call it. What happened was there was a young woman jogging in the park, I forgot her name, and she was brutally raped to the point where she was in the hospital, and I believe like she lost taste or sight or smell. She lost something, so it was very devastating for her. However, in trying to find her justice, the prosecutor just randomly selected a group of young men who were in the park wilding, a term that we use every day in the African American community that just means kicking it, having fun. They used it to their detriment and said that they were acting like wild animals. Therefore, they were the ones who caused the rape, this brutal rape of this young lady. Now, we know this is not true, but the thing that I really liked about the series was that it really shows you the intricacies of what happens in the questioning, in the jail, when they get out of jail, how it's hard for them to reintegrate into society, and the hardships that they face that you and I may not think about on an everyday basis. These were some of the things that I learned from this series, and I hope that you will learn more in depth in this video. I took a lot of notes while I was watching this series. Probably can't really see, but I'm scrolling, so I'm going to be looking at my phone, and let me just tell you, I would not watch this series again. So everything that I took the first time I watched it, because this is not something that I would do like a dissertation on, it's too heavy for that. I have a lot of things to talk about, so I'm going to do a two-part video. If you all like this video, just be sure to let me know in the comments, yeah, we want a part 2, or you know, I think I've learned quite a bit. Either way, it won't hurt my feelings. Just let me know if you would like to know more in depth of some of the perspectives that I had that I have not seen covered in other discussions. First things first, there were 4 African American men and there was 1 Latino. His name is Raymond. I don't know if I'm overthinking this, but in the beginning of the series, when they were interrogating everyone, the first person I recall to turn on the other 4, because mind you, at this time, they didn't know each other. So when they were turning on them, they were literally just saying what they were coerced to say. They had no relation to these other guys and probably couldn't have cared less about what happened to them because they were simply trying to go home. But the first person that I kind of saw them coerce into flipping the narrative on these other guys was Raymond. And for a second, I kind of thought about divide and conquer, because a lot of people of color are kind of grouped into the same type of thing when it comes to like oppression and systematic racism. But we all know that oftentimes one group of ethnicities will turn on the other group. We've seen, you know, slander from the Latin community to the African American community and vice versa. So when I first saw that, it kind of made me think about that. However, as the movie progresses, they all flip on each other and it was not just Raymond. But I still wondered that if they showed him turning on them first, as kind of a way to show like the divide and conquer that was still used in this case. Ooh, another thing that happened was Anton was a young boy in the park and the police beat him in the face. No, it wasn't Anton, excuse me, it was Kevin. They beat Kevin in the face. And when they interrogated him, they questioned the bruise on his face to try to turn it into evidence for the rape. And that immediately made me think about how they turn our pain against us for their benefit. There are a lot of instances in the Black community where we are suffering and we're inflicted by something that has been done to us. Let me just correct myself right now. I am an African American, so when I speak about injustice, I'm going to reference the African American community a lot. However, I am very aware that these things can happen to any communities of color, not just African Americans. So please forgive me if I continue to say that, but it's still relevant to other communities. Moving forward, there are instances such as the justice system, right? There are a lot of times where fathers are present in their lives but become victims of the justice system. They have been charged, they're in prison, and then a lot of times when you look at the statistics, they will talk about the number of homes that do not have fathers in them. Some of those homes are direct results of the injustice system. And so when I saw them question Kevin's bruise on his face and use that as evidence for the rape, it made me think about how they do that on a larger scale. They do turn our pain against us as a way to prove their superiority over us, when really they've inflicted the pain in the first place. Ooh, something that really hurt me. And I've seen this discussed quite a bit, but maybe not in the sense. Anyway, like I just said, how they take our pain and turn it against us, right? Anton's father apparently had already been in the criminal justice system, and he knew that his son was innocent. Ooh, that part really broke my heart. He knew that his son was innocent, but the police they said something to him, I think like about his job, right? About the way he provides for his family, which made him turn on his own son and made his son say he did something he did not do. And I immediately thought, even before I saw the rest of the series, how that was gonna cause a divide between the Black father and his family. And it did. Even in present day interviews, you see Anton has not forgiven his father. And I think about how many times Black fathers or fathers of color have had to do things that would hurt their children, would hurt their family, just to provide for their family. This is one of the many things I've said that kind of made me see a new perspective on some of the many topics that we discuss as it relates to the Black community. This movie made me kind of see the perspective and maybe how some of those things come into play. Let's talk about Corey for a second, right? So Corey was the oldest, and I think almost everyone would agree that he had it the hardest. Out of the exonerated five, I think everyone would agree Corey went through the most. And in thinking about his situation, it really made me realize how unjust the justice system is, but also kind of how evil money is. Because one of the only reasons that Corey had it the hardest was because he didn't have money. He couldn't afford an attorney. He couldn't afford the bills for court. His mom couldn't afford to take him back and forth. His mom couldn't afford to bail him out of jail. In between them being arrested and them being convicted, they still have that time when they're going through trials and meeting with the lawyers, but he couldn't afford any of that. And so he had it the hardest. And I realized I grew up in a very conservative household, and I grew up in a very mixed community, and sometimes those beliefs can rub off on you. So I grew up kind of thinking like if someone was in jail, then they did something wrong and they deserved to be there. Well, watching this series made me realize like, no, some people just don't have the money to get a good attorney to give their defense. Some people do belong in jail but have enough money to have an attorney to argue for them to not be in jail even when they are very guilty. And this really just broke my heart, because for Corey, it almost looked like his situation never had any hope. So let's say that his mom did have enough money to get him back and forth from court or out of jail or get him a good attorney, then how was she going to provide for the family that she already had at home? There's just really like no win in that situation, and I never realized that until I watched this series. And I'm sure that I know that this still happens in situations that we may never hear about. And my heart really just goes out for people who get in those type of situations and it's not even their fault. Who said this? Somebody in the movie said it's not about justice, it's about survival. And survival is all about politics. Because I think it was the corrupt attorney who said that, which in that case makes me think about how they flipped the purpose of the courts to their own agenda or to their own benefit, which is really pretty sick. Families couldn't even get jobs because of those false convictions. So let's think about Corey again, right? I don't know, they didn't really talk about his mom's like job or anything, and not that I saw, but I'm just thinking like, let's say she were to try to get a second job to afford the financial responsibilities that came with him being falsely accused, she probably wouldn't have been able to even get a job because of these false accusations. So that's just even more into like, some people are just stuck in a situation that they didn't even deserve to be in. Let's talk about other family members. So Yusef's mom, and I know that Yusef's mom is still alive and that Yusef is a real person, so I'm not going to say anything disrespectful to them at all. I know a lot of people have said things disrespectfully, but in that situation, like, what can you do? For those of you who haven't seen the series, Yusef's mom was really just concerned about Yusef. And on one hand, how can you blame her? And on the other hand, those other 4 kids, especially Corey, who was only accused because he was going with his friend who was Yusef. On the other hand, like, how can you just throw those kids under the bus, right? Like, how can you separate your son from them knowing that none of them did the crime? But like I said before, the only people who knew each other before they were falsely accused were Corey and Yusef. They didn't know those other guys, so I mean, what would you do in that situation? It's easy to point the blame when it's not you. Another thing I saw was Kevin's big sister Angie, which is very ironic because my name is Angie and I'm a big sister, so I really related to her, but I hope I never have to relate to her on that level. So Kevin's big sister Angie, you could tell they were very, very close. At the beginning of the movie, she was like walking with him. I think it was after school or something. And he was supposed to still be with her. To be honest, I don't remember what it was they were doing, and I'm not gonna watch it again, but somehow they got separated. And Angie feels like it's her fault that he's in jail. So her life really stopped. And I think about a lot of the families who may have some guilt because their children have been falsely accused or haven't been served justice in the justice system, and how that might affect their lives. So we saw Angie struggle with love. In the end, you know, it all worked out or whatever, but she had an interest in this guy wanting to take her out, and she didn't even want to go because she was so hurt that her brother was in jail for what she thought was her fault. And I think about maybe mothers who are too depressed to get another job. I think about brothers and sisters who may give up in their schoolwork because they miss their family. Like, I never really would have thought about how it affects the families. Like, you know, we probably all know someone who has a family member that is in jail or in prison, but you don't really think about the intricacies of their life, like how that truly affects them. And so watching this series really gave me, you know, an eye-opener into that, and being a big sister, knowing like a big sister or anyone who's just really family oriented, knowing like how much that would truly weigh on a person. So I think about how like patterns or cycles could be created because of the way that it will take on a family and leaving them feeling like they're hopeless or just extremely devastated, how cycles could be created and it's not their fault, especially in a situation where they were falsely accused. So that's just food for thought. But that's the end of part 1, because that part covers their childhood. That covers the first part of the series. If you would like to hear more details on their adulthood transition into life, just let me know in the comments. Be sure to tell me what you thought about the series. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, and I'll see you on the next video.